Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video. My name is Derek from Simnett Nutrition, and today I've got an especially interesting video because I'm going to be sharing with you guys my recent blood test results. So I've been vegan for over 10 years now, and it's been way too long since I had my blood tested, so I thought it was probably a good idea to go and get this done and just check my levels, see where I'm at, seeing if the supplementing that I'm doing now is working, seeing if I should be supplementing anything else, or working on any other areas of my diet. So I have a special friend that's going to come on here. His name's Dr. Matthew Nagra, and he's going to be talking about the results with us because he is much more well-versed and much more educated and prepared to talk about this than I am. I'm going to leave Matt's links in the description box down below, and if you guys want to check out his social medias and check out what else he's doing, definitely go down there and give him some love and thank him for doing this for us today. Just before we start, I do think it's important to mention that you should get blood tests done every few years. I think it's a good idea just to see where you're at, but especially, obviously, if you're having any health concerns, that's like a red flag. You should definitely go get your blood tested. But I think it's a good idea before you really make any large changes to your lifestyle or your diet, because you really want to see how those changes are affecting you. Like, I speak with so many people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm making all these healthy changes, then I'm gonna go get my blood tested to see how things are. But you can't tell if you've improved or anything if you don't have like a baseline to start at. So if you are, just going plant-based, or you're starting to become more vegan or whatever, I think it's a good idea to go get a blood test now, see where your levels are at, and then see where they're at in another year or year and a half or whatever from now, and see if, what you're doing is working. Anyways, without any further ado, let's bring Matt on here in the Zoom call, and we'll go over all these results. All right, so thank you, Dr. Matt, for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
So yeah, I guess we're gonna go right into it here. So we've got our blood tests up. We can both see them. And like I said in the intro, Matt's gonna go over them with us here, and he's gonna kind of explain what we're looking at with all these numbers. And he's gonna tell us if after 10 years being vegan, if I'm still healthy, if I should keep doing the same thing, and what I should change.
Oh, that's actually funny that you mentioned 10 years. I didn't know it was around that. I just passed the 10-year mark myself.
Nice.
That's fun. So let's just jump into things, as you mentioned.
Yep.
So right at the beginning of your test here, we have the hematology. These are very standard labs to get done, especially for people dealing with things like fatigue and that. You want to check like red blood cells, hemoglobin. That kind of tells you, is iron doing its job? If your hemoglobin numbers are good, and yours are definitely well within the normal range there.
Thanks.
Now, the white blood cell number is a little low, and that is something that comes up a lot with people who are plant-based.
Right.
It's a common concern I get. I'll have patients come in saying that, oh, my white blood cells are low. What do I do? What's happening? If you Google it, all sorts of things are going to come up.
Yeah.
But if you're just slightly low like that, I would suggest that it's perfectly safe, healthy. In fact, with people who are plant-based, because of lower levels of inflammation, a lot of the time you can end up with slightly lower white blood cell counts. And anywhere from slightly below the cutoff to kind of mid-range of the reference range is where we see the best long-term health outcomes. So as you get up near the top of the reference range, or if you get too low down below, I believe it's around 2 or 2.25, that's where risk increases. So I wouldn't worry about that number really at all there,
Nice.
Given that the rest of your labs look fine, and we're going to go through them here.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. I actually get that as a comment a lot as well. So I've had to look this up myself, because I've had numerous people messaging me, and they're like, I have, otherwise healthy like blood results, and I live so healthfully, like what's going on here? So yeah, thanks for explaining that. Really cool.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll leave a reference for you. You can toss in the description for that one too, if you want to take a look. And then going through the differential here, those are all of your other different types of, say, white blood cells. And again, they're all fine there. Now, your ESR and fibrinogen, they can be markers for inflammation. As we see with your ESR, you got barely nothing, almost nothing there.
Yeah.
So definitely doing good on that front. And we'll get to some other inflammatory markers in a little bit. Now we're going into your iron labs, and there are a couple flags there, and we'll talk about them in a second. The ferritin number is the standard lab that's done.
Okay.
Ferritin is your iron stores. So, it tells you how much iron you've got there. And there's a lot of debate, it seems, online around what level you want. Some people saying you want to be up above 100, which is quite frankly ridiculous, because the data on ferritin level shows that if you're below 20, and you supplement iron and boost your levels, you can benefit. You can increase energy or improve outcomes.
Right.
If you're already above 20 and you further boost your levels, there actually doesn't seem to be much in the way of improvement. So I would suggest that 20 seems to be a pretty solid cutoff. Now, that's mostly for women. Maybe it would be higher for males just generally because we aren't losing blood or losing iron on a monthly basis. But your numbers there look totally fine to me, especially given, as we mentioned earlier, your hemoglobin and everything looked good.
Right.
And there is data suggesting that that we actually don't want to go much higher for males than, say, like 70. And that's because iron is a double-edged sword. You don't want too much iron, right?
Right.
Too much iron is inflammatory, it's oxidative,
Yeah.
can increase risk of a variety of diseases as well. So again, perfectly fine. But on that note of not wanting to get too high, if we look at your actual serum iron, so this isn't just your stored iron, this is your serum iron and your saturation there, they're actually elevated slightly. And this isn't a test that's normally done. This is a test you would run if the ferritin was either really high or really low. But this panel just included it, so we can take a look. And given that all your other numbers look normal, how do we explain this? Well, I asked you how long you had fasted before you had this test, and how long was it?
It was like 15 or 16 hours or something like that. It was a bit long.
Yeah, and I know because you guys went in, there's a wait time and all of that. So once you get up above about 12 hours of fasting, your serum iron number increases. And so this is kind of an artificial or like an artifact of just waiting too long between eating and having the test done.
Right.
So it had your iron levels rise. Now your transferrin is the protein that carries the iron. And your iron saturation is essentially a calculation looking at how much transferrin is saturated with the iron. And so obviously if your iron goes up, your saturation is going to go up too. So that explains that, given that you're just ever so slightly above the reference range in both cases, just hardly at all. And given the fact that your ferritin and your blood counts and everything look normal, your inflammation obviously is very low. I am not at all worried about that. But again, of course, if there were other things going on, we might want to investigate.
Cool.
Now, an important one for all of your followers to look at is vitamin B12.
Right.
Even if we look at the kind of notes under the lab here, it talks about how above 220, normal, deficiency unlikely. In the 150 to 220 range, your borderline deficiency is possible.
Yeah.
I would suggest aiming to go even higher than that 220 mark. I would suggest deficiency is possible, even with values up around like 400 or up to say like around 400 or so. But your number of 200 is, like I said, borderline. And you told me that you weren't necessarily supplementing super regularly, correct?
Yeah, guilty as charged. So I supplement it like pretty casually, and I always recommend that other people do. It's to kind of do as I say, not as I do sort of thing. But yeah, I am one of the few unlucky people that it brings on like spots, brings on acne for me when I supplement it, especially in like higher doses. And that's something that is, being in front of the camera a lot and just, having gone through it in my youth, it's something that kind of like really freaks me out. So I really try to like, I'm purposely casual about my dosing and my supplementation with B12. And which is one of the reasons why I got this blood test, because I wanted to see where I'm at with all these numbers. I didn't want to have to be taking a bunch of B12 if it's giving me spots and all this, if my levels were fine. But my levels aren't fine, and I need to be supplementing it more, which I am now. And I found that if I keep the doses, like if I don't have a bunch of like, 1,000 microgram doses sort of back to back, I find that it's okay. If I just kind of like split them up into smaller doses, it does seem to be fine.
Yeah, and there's a variety of different dosing strategies. There's some that range from like 100 to 250 micrograms a day, or even just once weekly doses up to 2,500. There's a variety of different ways to dose it. But definitely I would suggest that. And the other thing we need to note about B12 tests is serum B12 isn't the best marker. Right. There are actually other tests you can run. There's methylmalonic acid, there's holotranscobalamin. Those are better markers. Just most panels won't cover that. They can be costly if you're paying out of pocket. And I would say they're more pertinent if you had B12 deficiency symptoms and your levels good on this test. So if your levels are up around 500 or something, I would suggest that, and you had symptoms, I would suggest that maybe we want to look further into that. Given that your numbers are on the low end here, your serum B12 levels are, it's just more reason to want to supplement, right? It's more of an issue of getting false positives with this test than getting false negatives.
Okay.
And so in your case, I would just suggest that means, yeah, you're probably on the low end there, and we want to take care of that. So like you're doing supplementing more regularly, definitely.
Yes. And I should mention, I was having, nutritional yeast, which is from fortified B12, having fortified foods as well, like non-dairy milks and stuff, the occasional mock meats, which often have B12 in it. And it wasn't enough. So just, at least for me. So just a message out there for everyone, or something to take note.
Yeah. And on that note too, I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of individuals wanting to just rely on fortified foods, and that's possible. But the way our absorption with B12 works is there's kind of a plateau effect. We have to produce intrinsic factor in our stomach, which binds the B12, helps with absorption. If at a certain level you bind up all your intrinsic factors all bound up, right? And so you can't absorb more at a given time unless you really mega dose it, which is why the RDA is set at like 2.4 micrograms a day, but you need to take 100 to 250 micrograms a day in a supplement form if you're taking it in one dose. Right. So unless you're eating decent doses of fortified foods 3 times per day, I would suggest that a supplement is the safest and easiest way to get your B12.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Next on your list, we've got the blood sugar results, and all those carbs and things you eat. Obviously, these are going to be through the roof, but not quite. Your glucose fasting, which is your blood sugar at the moment of the test, was just a 4.6 millimoles per liter. So that was a fantastic number. And your hemoglobin A1C is actually more interesting. This is looking at long-term blood sugar control. So how has your blood sugar been over the past 3-4 months?
Wow. Okay.
And again, you're like spot on, pitch perfect, right in the middle of the range there. So you've had really good control of your blood sugar levels. And if we jump down for a second, your insulin fasting was really low. It was just on the bottom end of the range at 21 there. And that is actually possibly a sign of really good insulin sensitivity. So again, you've got good insulin sensitivity based on everything we can see here. You've got really healthy kind of blood sugar regulation, and so certainly not at risk of anything like type 2 diabetes, which is something we know that a plant-based diet can be really beneficial for. Yeah,
exactly. Nice.
Yeah, and getting into, we've got your sodium, potassium, chloride. We've got all your electrolytes here. They can be markers for a variety of things, including kidney function. And again, all looks fine. We don't need to spend too much time on that.
Cool.
But your creatinine, and you wanted me to mention this because you've been supplementing creatine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and supplementing creatine can actually boost your creatinine levels a little bit. And we don't want elevated creatinine levels can be a sign of kidney dysfunction. You're still within the normal range. You're just on the upper end of the normal range because of the supplementation, but it's not anything to worry about. Creatine hasn't been shown to impair kidney function at all. It just raises that number a little bit. And then your estimated GFR is your glomerular filtration rate. This is looking at how well your kidneys are filtering, and again, that looks good there.
Sweet.
And then we move on down. We've got your calcium and phosphate, just some minerals that we ran. That they again look fine, but your urate or uric acid is a good one to talk about for a second. So uric acid, if it's elevated, can cause gout. That's the common one. Things that can raise uric acid are like certain meats, alcohol, being overweight can do it, having other comorbidities can do it, but obviously you're healthy there, and we've got a good kind of mid-range level. Also, you don't want to go too low because that can cause neurological issues as well. So you're definitely within a healthy range.
Sweet.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here.
Hey, I know. Well, this is why I'm having you on here, Max, because I don't know all this stuff. So this is perfect. It shows my total protein there. So that means that that means that I'm going to make lots of gains, or what? With the
Yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, your total protein, your albumin, they don't necessarily reflect, your protein intake at all. We regulate these within a very narrow range, but obviously you're not falling short in that realm either.
Sweet.
Now moving on to your general chem here. So these are largely looking at your liver function, liver and somewhat gallbladder function.
Yep.
Most of these, from your alkaline phosphatase all the way down to lactate dehydrogenase there, these are enzymes involved with your liver. And ALT, or alanine aminotransferase, and aspartate aminotransferase, those are some of the primary markers we look at for any kind of liver dysfunction or liver issue going on. And obviously you're looking really good there. So again, I don't need to spend too much time talking about the liver labs, but I can definitely say that you're healthy. In
nice.
That respect.
Cholesterol.
Yeah.
That's next.
This is the fun one. So your total cholesterol is at 4.56 millimoles per liter. Your LDL, which is classically known as the bad cholesterol, it's actually the LDL particle is what carries cholesterol through the bloodstream to tissues, and what can cause heart disease, right? So LDL particles, if they're elevated, they can interact with the artery lining, and they can actually be held within it's called the subendothelial space of the artery wall, where it can eventually kind of trigger this inflammatory cascade that leads to the development of an atherosclerotic plaque, and then you've got one of those ruptures off, and you got a heart attack eventually. So that's kind of the really quick version of what happens there.
Wow.
So your LDL levels yeah, exactly. No, that was the really short version of it. Your LDL number is at 2.47. That's kind of mid-range there. But what seems to be ideal for really dramatically lowering your heart disease risk is actually maintaining even below like 1.8 millimoles per liter. So really, with LDL cholesterol, the lower the better. Even within the normal range, as we creep up towards the top, your risk of developing atherosclerosis does increase slightly. And that's because atherosclerosis is caused by lifelong exposure to a given LDL level. So, the higher it is for the longer period of time that it is, elevated, the higher your risk becomes. So definitely want to keep that number as low as possible. The foods that typically raise LDL are going to be foods rich in saturated fats like meat, fatty dairy products, foods rich in cholesterol like eggs, for example. But then on the plant side, there's a lot of coconut products, especially coconut oil. There's palm oils. Those can be high in saturated fats as well, whereas many plant foods lower your LDL. So a lot of your classic plant protein sources like legumes, especially soy, is fantastic for that. And then whole grains, anything with a viscous fiber. So if you think of like eggplant or okra, they've got that slimy sort of texture to them. That can help lower cholesterol. Yeah, polyunsaturated fats. Flax has both polyunsaturated fats and a lot of fiber there that can help. It's fantastic for that. So just really all of your whole plant foods have a beneficial effect, or at least most of them have beneficial effects, some greater than others with regard to LDL. So,
and Matt, yeah, I just want to add, like, the total cholesterol at 4.56 is at the higher end of the reference range.
Yep.
But a lot of people seem to think that you need to be consuming cholesterol in order for our body to, be making an adequate amount.
No, that is not the case at all. It's really funny. There's a few different reasons that people suggest that. For one, they believe that we need it for our brain. But guess what? Cholesterol doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So it is just, that's completely debunked. Eating cholesterol isn't going to lead to more cholesterol in your brain. So just end of story there. But then the other one is for hormones. But where are hormones created? They're created in tissues. How does cholesterol get into tissues? Well, with LDL cholesterol, it's due to LDL receptors on the tissues. How do we increase LDL receptors? We do that by eating polyunsaturated fats and by decreasing saturated fat consumption. So by doing that, you have less cholesterol in your bloodstream because you've increased the number of receptors pulling it out of your bloodstream. Right. And so this whole idea, I'm not suggesting, I want to be very clear that it's going to improve hormone health by lowering your LDL cholesterol through these means. I'm just suggesting that even the idea behind it is so flawed that you need to eat cholesterol for that. And we have data on, if we're looking at actual outcome data, which is what matters, we have data on people who take what are called PCSK9 inhibitors, which are medications that dramatically drop your cholesterol levels, just abolish them. And they have no issues with hormone production. We also have data on people with genetically very low cholesterol levels. Again, no problem with hormone production. So this idea behind us needing cholesterol is just very, very ridiculous. And if anything, it's actually dangerous, I would suggest.
Well, thank you for clearing that up.
Rant over. And then we'll get into your HDL. It looks good. There's actually a lot of evidence now that the number for your HDL concentration doesn't actually matter that much. So whether it's higher or lower doesn't have as much of an impact as the functionality of that HDL. And things that might improve functionality are like maintaining a healthy weight, exercising, and all of that. But those same factors seem to raise HDL. So HDL can be associated with better health outcomes because it's associated with better activities or lifestyle habits. And so it's kind of a confounding issue there. But just generally, it can be a marker for better health, but it doesn't cause improvements, I would suggest. And then the ratio, we don't need to speak about too much. We've kind of already covered all the main ones, but the triglycerides, yours are great. 0.83 triglycerides, that's very low.
Nice.
And that again can be another risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So you're doing just excellent in that space.
It's cool to see that number because, from the haters, I often get comments, let's see your triglyceride levels with all that sugar and fruit and smoothies that you're having.
Yeah, no, yours are great there. I like to see some people try to even beat that out. Actually, I can say mine's even lower. But I wanted to throw that out there. But anyways, no, it's good. And your TSH is just a marker for thyroid health. As this TSH number gets higher, it can indicate hypothyroidism. So it's kind of it's counterintuitive. As TSH goes up, your thyroid is under functioning, but that's because TSH is trying to stimulate your thyroid. So it increases to try to boost your thyroid function.
Interesting.
We don't need to go into all your testosterone numbers because you've already done that in a separate video, but they definitely look good. Your total testosterone, if anything, on the higher range, your free bioavailable, they look good. Nothing much to say there, but we can now show, since you're showing the whole test, that it is indeed your test.
Yeah, exactly. Right, some people thought it wasn't.
You didn't pay someone else off to take it for you. Now, your C-reactive protein is a marker for inflammation. It's kind of the standard marker that's done. We already talked about your ESR previously. This is just another piece of evidence that your overall inflammation is very low, 0.7 grams per liter there. Okay, going on to vitamin D. This is something that here in Canada is definitely an issue because we don't get a lot of sun exposure. Someone like myself with darker skin needs even more sun exposure to produce enough, and we certainly don't get enough year round.
No.
I know Health Canada recommends that everybody supplement at least through the winter time. Osteoporosis Canada recommends people supplement all year round. And I can tell you've been supplementing. So your numbers look really solid there at 99 nanomoles per liter.
Nice.
So definitely you're provided you're eating enough calcium, you're exercising, which I know you are, and you're getting enough vitamin D there. I'm sure you've got pretty good bone health. Yeah,
I'll have about, I'll do like 4,000 to 5,000 IUs like a handful of times a week is sort of what I'll try and do. And that's through the winter.
Yeah, and there's a range of different kind of dosing. I know the tolerable upper limit that's set is at 4,000 international units a day. Now, you're not doing that every day, but different recommendations will range from doing like 400 international units as the minimum all the way up to, some people do recommend up to like 4,000 or so. So there's variability. Obviously, people can speak with their doctor about what is best for them. And that goes for anything we've mentioned here. Please, before changing anything you're doing, please speak with your healthcare provider.
Yes, not medical advice.
Yeah, please. And we're on to the last test, your omega-3 score.
Nice.
So This one is interesting because we actually don't have a lot of data on different blood levels or blood cell levels of omega-3s and what leads to the best health outcomes. So this, I would say, is more for interest sake.
Right.
And just to see kind of if you are supplementing, is it boosting your levels or anything like that, which we can talk about. Now your EPA is the first number there, eicosapentaenoic acid. That is, and these are numbers, EPA and DHA. Those are the fatty acids that you would get typically from fish, right?
Right.
We eat flax or chia or whatever, and we convert them into these. But people who are getting them directly typically get them from fish, or we can get it where the fish get it, which is microalgae, and take it in the form of a supplement. So the EPA number is the anti-inflammatory one it has been shown at high doses to help with secondary prevention of cardiovascular disease. So if people have had a heart attack previously, supplementing on top of that can be beneficial. Then the DHA number, which is the third one down, that is the one that's usually suggested to be beneficial for brain health.
Yes.
And important in that manner. Now, when I saw your DHA number, I asked you again if you had supplemented, because that was actually a lot higher than I typically see, and so you have been supplementing. It sounds like correct.
Yeah, I do supplement it, but not very much.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take it, consume maybe probably I don't know what it would probably be about 500 what would it be, milligrams of EPA and DHA.
Yeah.
That probably 2 or 3 times a week, and then lots of flax, hemp seed, and walnuts outside of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, your numbers there definitely just look higher than I typically see on average. But yeah, it looks good there. And DHA, like I mentioned, typically suggested to be beneficial for brain health, but actually, genetically higher levels haven't been shown to help with things like Alzheimer's disease. Supplementing hasn't been shown to help in that manner either. But where supplementing has been shown to be beneficial is in people with mild cognitive impairment. So people with issues with that regard, supplementing has actually been shown to help. And so that's something to take away with regard to omega-3s. If you're eating an overall healthy diet, and you're eating a lot of even plant-based sources of omega-3s, if you are otherwise healthy, you don't have cardiovascular disease, you don't have cognitive impairment, you don't have these other issues, then supplementing might not be of benefit. In fact, the evidence hasn't really shown that it is. It can be considered, if you want, as a precautionary measure. Whereas if you do have cardiovascular disease, if you do have mild cognitive impairment, there might be benefit there. And then I would suggest that even throughout pregnancy and breastfeeding, as many organizations will recommend it, it's a good idea just to be on the safe side. But even then, there's a bit of controversy around whether it's truly necessary. Now, the reference ranges that they provided here for your omega-3 whole blood score, which is the total percentage in your blood, and the omega-3 index, which is the percentage of fatty acids in your actual red blood cells. The reference ranges they provide are based on some epidemiology that is, again, pretty minimal in scope. So far, we don't have a ton of it, but we can kind of get some idea out of it. And if we look at your whole blood score of 5.98, the range where people see the greatest reduction in risk of sudden death, according to this, is 6.1% to 10.2%. So you're just below kind of the area where there's typically that greatest protection. Yeah, and then with the omega-3 index value, you're at 6.39, and again, that range is 8 to 11%. So you're kind of in the middle. You're in the middle kind of average with that. But again, like I mentioned, we already know that people who are eating plant-based are at lower risk of these sorts of issues. Whether or not there's further benefit to supplementing is up for debate. And it seems that in a lot of cases, the reason that we see something like a higher level of your omega-3 values or EPA or DHA being associated with better health outcomes is because most people who are who are having those sorts of levels are eating more fish. And if they're eating more fish, they're typically replacing meat. So they're eating less meat. We know that saturated fat increases risk of Alzheimer's disease. We know that obviously saturated fat increases risk of cardiovascular disease. And so if we're replacing those sorts of foods with these other foods, then we're going to see a benefit. So,
right.
So that was a lot of information for someone to take in, but yeah,
that's
kind
good.
of a general breakdown.
That's all really good info. Yeah, sort of like the Mediterranean diet and olive oil thing there.
Yeah,
they're replacing saturated fat with that.
100%. And actually, there was research on the MIND diet, which is kind of a combo Mediterranean and DASH diet for don't know if it was all dementia or just Alzheimer's disease, but they found through say like seafood, but then it just plateaued out. There wasn't benefit to having like a serving every day kind of thing versus like once a week. So again, it's kind of shows that it might be due to more other benefits or other foods or what you're replacing.
Cool. Thanks so much, man. So that's pretty much it. We did it all.
Yeah.
I hope everybody enjoyed like nerding out on all this. I'm sure people learned a lot because there was a lot of good information there. And this was a lot like, thank you so much for coming on, because this was a lot more helpful than me just kind of like, just scrolling through and being like, okay, look, I'm in the reference ranges there. Like you just gave us so much more to go on.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it, and I hope that helps. And like I said, for a few of these things, I can always send over references and stuff so people can take a look for themselves. Yeah,
send over whatever. I'll definitely put that in the description below. I'll also put your links where people can find you in the description box down below, because you have such an awesome Instagram, and I know you're doing like wonderful things at your clinic as well. So where can people find you?
As you mentioned, Instagram is probably my main platform that I'm most active on, just at dr.matthewnagra. Also on Facebook, Twitter, same name. I have a website, drmatthewnagra.com, where I do post some larger articles occasionally. I've been a little inactive lately, but maybe I'll get something going on there again soon. Yeah. Got some recipes, a few of them on there as well. If people have questions, feel free to message me. As far as patients, I might as well mention I do accept patients within British Columbia only at the moment, via either telemedicine or in person at my clinic in Vancouver. So if you have any questions about any of that stuff, just please message me.
Nice. Yeah, Matt, you're super helpful. And your Instagram's awesome. It's always fun watching you, like, dispelling all the myths and you do a lot of the dirty work. You get in there, debunking people's posts and stuff, which I really appreciate. There's so many people that, that find you through those sorts of things and start questioning, the other, what maybe some people are saying, these health gurus online, when you come in and just drop the knowledge that you do. So yeah, you're doing awesome stuff, man.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why I do it. It's not necessarily for the person spreading the information. It's for the people reading it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah, good point. All right. Well, I'll let you go. And thanks so much for all this again. And I hope everybody enjoyed something out of it. Go check out Matt. And I'll close this video without you here. But thanks so much, man. Wow, so that was a lot of information. Looks like I'm doing okay. I definitely need to focus on my B12 supplementation, so that's something that I've been doing more ever since I got these results back. And I will go get that tested again in 6 months or so to see if I have brought my levels up. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Definitely go down in the description box and check out Matt's social media. Go give him some love for doing this for us. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the description box down below. I'll try and get to them, and it might even be a good topic to make a video around. You never know. So thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe so you can see more, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.